Manhood Academy podcast. Welcome. Let me adjust the mic level. Beep, 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 beep. Test, test, test. Here we go. Well, I wanted to do a podcast much earlier, but it got to that point where it was kind of like the tipping point, and I hadn't had a podcast out for a while, so I thought it's time to make one. And right at that second, the very instant I thought this is a good idea to make a podcast, I just got AIDS, Ebola, lice, gonorrhea, chlamydia, dementia, every disease basically, and was just coughing and dying. And so I just felt miserable for a couple days, and how long has it been? I don't know, maybe a week? Yeah, maybe going on a week, so. And then I thought I was getting good. I thought I was doing well. I thought my oral grammar was improving, but it actually was going downhill. So, I right at the tail end where I was starting to feel good, you know how you do like some strenuous physical exercise and you totally screw it up and then you slide back down again? So I slid back down again, and now I was just at the recovery point, and I noticed, sometimes there's like a recovery point. Like, when you have a cold, you have that like little cold taste in your mouth, and it's like that cold, not a sensation, but like there's an actual smell and taste to it. Like, you have a cold taste, like you always recognize it from childhood. That's the cold taste. So I have the cold taste in my mouth. But at a certain point, when you get well, you lose the cold taste. I've found that at the tail end of your cold, while you still have the cold taste, you can start doing some kind of like strenuous activity, whether it be working out, jogging, running, playing a sport, whatever, that the next day, or maybe after you're done doing it, it's kind of like you've recovered at that point. So I thought, yeah, this was the recovery point. So I went out today, played a couple sports, and I don't feel too terrible. I feel fine. So I think I'm actually at the actual end of this cold. Yeah, it was miserable for the last few days or so. I was like, I should get a podcast out, but I was like, forget it. I'm about to pass out. I feel like I'm going to die. And I didn't want to drink NyQuil. You know how you drink NyQuil and that stuff will cure you the next day? I didn't want to dope up, so what I did was I was talking to these people in the pool. We're swimming in the pool with this other girl, and I brought her, and we met this other, there's another couple in there, and we started talking about wine, and then I was like, you know what, wine, they always read things about wine having, them always doing studies about red wine being, have a glass a day, or I don't know what it is, a glass a week, a glass a day, something like that, where if it's in moderation, of course, if you're drinking gallons of red wine, like anything else, it's terrible for you. But in moderation, wine is good for you. You got the skin of the grapes has the tannin, makes the wine red, and it's got like antioxidant. I can't even say it. Antioxidant. The stuff that basically is clean, detoxifying your system. Antioxidants. I think that's what you call it. So red wine has those properties in it. It's good for you. So in lieu of getting red wine, I got white wine, which tastes like horse piss. It's just terrible. So every now and then I'd go to the fridge and take a swig of this wine, just kind of using it in the vein of NyQuil. just think of me holding a bottle like it's a poor man's NyQuil and just downing a shot of it every now and then. It's just so terrible. I think it made me worse. But I figure it's from the grape. It's produced from a fruit in the ground. It's fermented. It's got alcohol, which is if it doesn't kill your liver, it's detoxifying it. You know how you pour alcohol in movies. You ever see a movie where you get shot in a bullet? You get shot in the war or shot with a bullet, and there's no hospital nearby. And if some dude's drinking whiskey, you know what he's going to do? He's going to take a bottle of it, or he's going to take a swig of it, and while you're not looking, he's going to douse you with alcohol right in your one. You're going to scream, "Ah!" But it's supposed to be good for you. So I figure it's along those lines. So I've been dousing myself with a shot of alcohol every now and then. And since I don't really drink that much, it's terrible. So now that you have that long, rambling story under your belt, I thought we'd get to some podcasting. Okay, there's a couple things I'm not sure. I think I'm so dying to do a revision of the whole book, and just for like grammar and structure, just to clarify sentences and things like that. Because every now and then I see stuff posted. Like, I can't remember, High School 101 posted a recent passage from the ebook saying, here's something that really touched me about the ebook, or here's something that really impressed me about it. And I read it and I was cringing. Oh God, it sounds so fucking terrible. It sounds like a little kid wrote that. So I had to immediately go to the ebook, find that section, rewrite the entire thing. So I love it when you guys post sections, because I get to either cringe at our own work, or I get an opportunity to rework a section and make it pro, or I get to enjoy something that you enjoy about our work through your eyes. And that's probably, I think, one of the most exciting things is seeing you guys get one of these concepts. A lot of these things are old hat to us because we're instructors and we teach this and we already know how to do it, blah, blah, blah. It's like if you know how to ride a bike, it's nothing special to ride a bike day after day. It's not a big deal. But to some little kid who has never ridden a bike before and learning how to pedal for the first time, it's conquering the world. It's this amazing accomplishment. So that's how I feel with a lot of this discovery of the things that you guys are learning here at Manhood Academy. It's always exciting to see you guys go through the process of getting your balls back, learning how to manage your expectations effectively, and learning how to say no to people, learning how to say yes to your functional expectations. So when you start learning these things and applying them, especially when you're applying them and have experiences and you're like, oh, that clicked with this thing I heard in the ebook. That's like exciting for me. When I read that stuff, I get a boner. I'm like, oh. And then I like going back to the section of the ebook and rereading it and going, oh, that's so amazing. And it's really not as amazing writing it as it is your appreciation of it through your actual experience, through your actual life experiences with people, your social interactions with girls and guys. It's not impressive to me until you are in a situation and you're like, oh, this thing in the ebook, this is how it actually applies here. Oh, see it, now it makes sense. And when you write that, enjoy that, post that, it's like Christmas morning for me all over again. So I wanted to talk about success and failure. And I wanted to actually include this success part. I don't want to turn the ebook into a self-help book. I definitely don't want to turn it into a self-help book because social interaction is not about self-help. If anything, it's anti-self-help. It's social help. This is acknowledging that you are not living in a vacuum. You cannot socialize by yourself. You cannot practice socialization like Zyga. You can't be G Zyga and build a socialization robot, a love me robot where you have sex with her and then you program her to talk to you and then you think you're going to learn socialization by yourself, by your own methods, by your own hand. No, you're going to have to learn socialization by socializing with other people. Not only do you require other people to understand how to socialize properly, how to get that feedback from people, like when you're managing your expectations, you actually need another person there to disagree with you. You need to disagree with them. You need to negate their expectation. Say, look, you're disapproving of their expectation and you're approving of your expectation. You're reintroducing your expectation to them. So it requires that other person to have that experience, to have that actual experience, to have the rubber meets the road. So to try and simulate this or to try and practice this without the other person, it's nearly impossible to get the same experience. So social interaction is not learned in a vacuum. And also you need the help of your instructors and your peers. You need the instructors to give you the roadmap to tell you what the hell to do in the first place. And then you need your peers to have that similar struggle, to have that it's not just the camaraderie, because you're definitely getting socialization experience by talking to your friends, to your fellow students, I should say. But you're getting that feeling of, not the feeling, but it's the sense that you guys are both going through the same thing. You have somebody that kind of understands what you're going through. Yes, the instructors have most likely understand where you're at, but they're not in that raw stage of that experience like your fellow students are. So yes, they can relate, but the students who are, scared too and don't know what to do and are screwing up just alongside you, that's just as necessary as having a competent instructor who knows what to do, who knows that you're failing, who knows how to get you past it. It's just as valuable to have that sense of community with your students, with your fellow students, to say, oh, look, this guy's failing too. This is why he's failing. Like a lot of times if you see us correcting or criticizing a student on the forum, you can see what he's doing wrong. And a lot of times that matches your experience. Oh, I do that wrong. That's why he's having that problem. I need to learn from that. Or you can see why other students are succeeding. You can go, oh, this guy's making it because he's paying attention in class, because he's doing X and getting Y result, just like it says in the ebook, just like the instructors are telling him to do. And that's why he's getting that result. So you can see what they're actually doing in their social interactions when they record, a report or something, or they talk about how they're managing their expectations in their real life, not just in the chat room. So you get that sense of, I'm going through this with other students. Other students are in the same place. I'm not just this guy who is, a fish out of water and nobody understands what I'm going through and just the instructors are just trying to pull me along. There's also other students just like me who are experiencing the same types of problems. So I'm not alone in this. And that is really a grand view of social interaction. That's really a bird's eye view of what it means to have a social experience. Because you got to understand, if you had a normal social experience growing up, you wouldn't need this academy in the first place. You'd have your father, who would represent the instructors at Manhood Academy. He would be the guy teaching you all the pros and cons of the experiences you're about to have. He'd be giving you the roadmap, the model of behavior. Again, we're making it hypothetically if your dad was an authoritative guy and knew how to get his expectations met. Most of your dads either weren't there or had no clue what they were doing, had no clue how to get their expectations met, had no clue how to exercise their authority over their wife or spouse or girlfriend or whoever raised you. So that's part of the problem. You had no roadmap. You had no model. Your dad did not teach you anything about exercising your authority properly over a woman. So that's why you're here. So if he was one of those guys who did model that behavior to you, you have an example right there. So that would be akin to your instructor. And then your friends would be like your students. Growing up, you would have interactions with them. You know, you'd have good times with your friends, you have bad times with your friends, you'd come home happy, you'd come home sad, you'd cry to your dad and say, look, this happened, and he'd give you like the quote, quote, life lesson, the talks, you know, what you need to do, how you need to handle yourself in certain situations, and then you just grow up like your dad, end up like your dad, because that is basically like your instructor. So you're going to end up like your instructors here if you're raised under your instructor's roof. Manhood Academy is like your house, it's like your home right now. So you're having a second childhood, I guess you might say, under Manhood Academy. And you don't get any ice cream or beanies, but it's the same type of effect that's going on here. So you could see that even in your normal, if you had a normal socialization, if you were socialized normally growing up, it would be the same thing. You wouldn't be in a vacuum. Your dad wouldn't put you in a room and say, learn how to grow up, learn how to interact with other people. Your whole life was spent socializing, learning how to socialize, and that's how you become competent socially when you grow up into an adult. So you missed that step. So trying to think that you're going to circumvent that somehow just because you're smarter now, not going to happen. You need that socialization interaction. You need those failures alongside your students. You need to talk to people. You need to practice getting your expectations met with those in your immediate environment, your friends, your family, etc. You need to have the interaction with the instructors. They're like the papa. You need to be sharing your experiences. Those of you who keep your experiences close to your vest, like you're playing poker, like you think you're fooling the instructors and you just want to appear smart in front of everybody and not fail, you're already failing. And this is leads me to what I wanted to talk about. I didn't want to make this a self-help thing. I don't want you to hear slogans like reach for the stars and quitters never win and winners never quit and all that crap. But some things are just so practical and so essential that I have to talk about them. So one of the things I'm going to include in the ebook, which I wrote down, actually this was not even talking to a guy. This was talking to a girl. One of our visitors to the chat room, Eris, what's her name? I forgot her name. Eris Dorizia? So whatever, the chick that's purple, has the purple colored icon. The one I caught, let me see, who did I catch beating off with her? Tugger, you little bastard. Tugger was having a little extracurricular activity in the chat room, not allowed. If you want to beat off with chicks, take them to your cam, go private chat with them, go IM them. Manhood Academy is not your crutch. Manhood Academy is not your pimping zone. If the girls are here in the chat room, it's because of us, not because of you. So don't think you get to play around in our chat room. You don't. Keep your penis to yourself. Boggs, that goes for you, trying to pull booby pictures off of chicks. Yes, I know it's tempting if there's a girl there. You guys are super uber nerds, and it's probably the first pair of boobies you get to see, but again, the chat room is for the chat room. The purpose is already there. There's already enough posts and podcasts about what you should be doing in the chat room that you know exactly what you should be doing. It's not penis roulette in there, so keep your penises in your pants. Yes, girls are stupid. They are gullible. They will show their boobies on cam. They will describe their sexual experiences. They'll talk about being fingered in class, etc. That your job is not to coax that out of them. They don't know any better. I'm going to consider the girl the retard 100% of the time. I'm just going to blame you because you're the guy. You're the responsible one. You're supposed to be learning how to lead girls in social interactions. If you think you're so confident that you can get a girl naked or talk sexually to her in the chat room, go out and do it in real life. Don't use the chat room to become a guy who needs to pay $2.95 to talk on a webcam. If you're going to do that, go do it. Don't do it in our chat room. There's plenty of, I'm not saying you're not allowed to do that. I'm not going to be your mom and say what you can and can't do. But in the academy, I am your mom. I am your dad. I will beat you. If I catch you, there will be consequences, no doubt. And those who have violated rules of Manhood Academy know what I'm talking about. So I'm not saying being on your best behavior in the chat room, but you know the bare minimum of what is and isn't allowed. So don't violate those rules. The chat room is to improve your expression. It's for your benefit, so don't screw it up. If you're getting horny, go beat off. If you're getting horny, go talk to a girl. Go socialize. Go practice. That is why girls are there in real life, so that you can practice socializing with them. You want to eventually be able to attract a girl. You want to be able to attract male friends. That is the whole point of those people in your immediate environment. You should be able to go out and talk to them. If you're stuck in the chat room trying to get a girl's pants off, you're failing already. Which will bring us to failure. Failure and success. This is a chat I had with this girl, and you can see that regardless of the gender, the same principle applies here. So pay attention, because this was said to a girl, Eris again, in the chat room, but it's just as easily something I probably have said this to you guys, but I just want to make sure that this is going to be an ebook next time, in the next revision. And it's been revised to some extent already. It's already got a pretty new cover right now, if any of you bothered to check. There's been some revisions already, but I didn't want to announce it yet because I still had a bunch of other things I wanted to do, and this is one of them, and I'm still kind of up in the air about how to include more examples, because I just deleted like 2 major examples I typed up in there. I'm not really sure about the format of the examples. We definitely have a lot of examples. I mean, I'm brainstorming ideas. I want to have an actual girl, and she says something and I say something to her, and so you can see how expectations are managed like in real life, not just on the page, but you get a sense, because I want you guys to understand what it means to apply pain and apply pleasure. I hate when guys like Bogler say, I'm applying pleasure to a girl, or I'm applying pain to a girl, and they have no fucking clue what they're talking about. They have no fucking clue. So that's why we don't want to hear applying pleasure or applying pain out of your mouths at all in the future, at all. You should be saying, I did X, Y, and Z, which is a specific thing. Like, this girl was being a bitch, so I said, get out of my house, or I said, shut up, or I said, don't act like a bitch around me. So you don't need to tell us when you're applying pain and pleasure, unless you're just analyzing what you said in your text, directly in your text. But you need to show us what you're doing exactly to apply pain and pleasure. Because otherwise you're going to end up like High School 101 when he was back in his, I'm not sure if he still understands this or not, but he said, I was applying pleasure to this girl, and I was asking her, where are you from? How are you doing? What are your interests? What's your favorite color? That is not applying pleasure. That is being a painful, clueless fuck. If you do not provide incentive to a girl to talk to you, she has no reason to answer your questions. Questioning a girl is not applying pleasure to her. Now, that is not a strict rule. There are certain ways you can ask a question. Like, I can ask you, where are you from? That's a question. Technically, that's a question. But the difference is it's not. Well, the difference, I haven't said the other question yet. That's one way to ask. That is not applying pleasure. You can also ask, are you from that city that smells like cinnamon rolls when you drive by, and it's an industrial place, but it's got bakeries everywhere, and it looks like something out of a Ronald Dahl novel where it's like Charlie in the Chocolate Factory, and it makes you think of like childhood. Is that the type of city you're from? So technically that's a question too. But as you see, I've added something of my own experience. I've added something of my own reaction to things. I've conveyed my thoughts to a person. I've helped the person enter into my experience through just asking that type of question, through asking that question, where are you from? So there's 2 ways to ask a question. One is pleasurable. One is applying pleasure. When I ask you that question, I actually took that opportunity to interject my experience into that question. So now it wasn't just a question relying on your response, but it actually provided you with stimulation. You were stimulated to answer that. You might laugh. You might think it's cute, charming, amusing. You might be more inclined to answer now because I've stimulated you. So I've given you a pleasurable reason to answer the question. The point is not whether it's a question or a statement. The point is whether or not you understand what it means to apply pleasure. If you don't know what it means to apply pleasure, it's probably because you're getting stuck on these terms, applying pain, applying pleasure. You have no real world experience of that. So you're just like theorizing out of your ass. So we want you to stay away from using those terms, applying pleasure, applying pain. We just want to know exactly what you did, exactly what you said. And then if you want to editorialize about what you said in brackets and say, here, I'm applying pleasure when I said, I like your hair, or I think you're one of the sexiest girls I've ever met. You're so down to earth. The way you say things, it makes me think of a special time and place when I was at McDonald's when I was a kid, or something, something where you're actually stimulating the girl to respond. That is applying pleasure. So we don't want to know about your description of what you're doing. We don't want to know about your theory of what you're doing. We want to know what you're actually doing. So this is why I had the intention. I had the thought of having a girl actually disagree with me or dispute something, or dispute an expectation over with me, so you could see as we go back and forth what it's like to disagree with somebody, what it's like to disapprove of their expectation, apply pain to it, and then reintroduce your expectations. So I wanted you to see this real time in a live, not necessarily on a real, like a real conversation, but maybe so that you get a sense of what is going on and what it's like to apply pain. Like, what made me think of this is, Travo always used to say, I thought applying pain was like yelling and screaming at somebody. I was thinking, how did he come up with that? Well, he's referencing his own experience. And, when he thinks of pain, he thinks immediately of his dad yelling at his mom, or his dad yelling. I think he was mentioning something about yelling. So his reference for painful things involve yelling. So naturally, when he hears apply pain, he thinks that means yell at the top of your lungs. That's not what we're talking about. Usually when people are yelling at the top of their lungs, it means they've lost control. It means they aren't managing their expectations effectively. So we want to have as many clear, concise, accurate examples, real life examples as possible in the ebook, or, in podcast form, video form, whatever, so that you can see exactly what we're talking about when we say apply pain, apply pleasure. And I know it's hard from just reading a written example, understanding what that means to apply pain or apply pleasure. So that's why it's good to, listen to those phone calls with those girls so you can see where I'm actually doing that. And I wanted to have different examples. I don't want to just have one where I'm trying to attract a girl, but I also want to have one where there's an actual fight, even if it has to be made up, but you can see how I'm responding in an actual disagreement where I'm not necessarily, either maybe I am trying to attract somebody, or maybe we'll have another case where I'm just in an adversarial position where I have my expectation, my opinion, whatever, and I want to enforce it. So I want to have a wide range of examples. And I'm not exactly sure how to do that. I wrote, like I said, I wrote 2 out and I deleted them because I just feel it wasn't conveying exactly what I wanted to get across to you. I don't want to get across words to you. I want to get across the sense of what it means to actually apply pain, what it means to actually apply pleasure. Like when you listen to these podcasts and you hear us talk, when I have a co-host Bogler on, and sometimes right now when I'm just talking by myself to you guys, you get some pleasure out of this. You get stimulated. You get encouraged to keep going. You get inspired to do things with your life and change things about your life. So you're getting pleasure out of that. So this is a real life example of a stimulating expression, and you getting pleasure from this expression, from my expression. So I want you to have real life examples of an interaction between people where there's a change. There's an exchange of pain and pleasure between those two people. That's crucial to see that. And the model for that would be, like when you're growing up between your mom and dad, or how your dad handles people he comes in contact with. That's your model for how to apply pain and pleasure properly, and your mom too. So when you see your mom, how she interacts with people, when you see your friends, especially your good friends, you see how they interact with girls, how they interact with guys. Sorry, I'm making blowing sounds here as I'm trying to clean off my keyboard at the same time. I'm like talking to you, and I see a little piece of fur on my keyboard. I'm like, get off of there, fur, wherever you came from. So, like your best friends, you're like, oh, my best buddy talks to girls this way, or he talks to guys this way, so this is how I should do it. I want to emulate his behavior because I think he's cool. So there's a lot of places where you get these examples of models of behavior for how you pattern your own behavior. So I want to give you some actual examples, but not just, retard examples like your friends are mostly retarded and have no idea how to get their expectations met. They're either sarcastic, retards, like chicks, or they're passive aggressive, using, snide remarks out of the side of their mouth and not being able to confront somebody, etc. So we don't want to give you bad examples. We want to give you good examples of how to directly confront somebody, how to directly get an expectation met, how not to be a chick, how not to be a mangina, how not to act like an emasculated male who is makes people cringe when they're around him. We want to avoid that. Okay, getting back on track here. I wanted to talk about how to get things done, because a lot of you are like this chick. You just basically engage in wishful thinking. Like, for instance, she wants to be a good writer. So I said, well, how do you plan on becoming a good writer? Well, I hope I read a lot of books, and I'm just going to improve. Something along those lines. Okay, that's a typical answer you guys would give. Like if I said, how are you going to improve at social interaction? Well, I'm just going to talk to people, and then I'm going to listen to what the professors say at Manhood Academy, and then I'm just going to learn how to socialize after a certain amount of time. Bullshit. You're not going to learn anything. You're going to be in the same place you started. Why? Because if you don't know how to get better, you're not going to get better. If your plan is, I'm going to get better, you're not going to get better. I'm going to do it this time, guys. I like when I'm reading student posts and they get some criticism from the instructors, and they're like, oh, I'm going to turn it all around. This post really woke me up. I'm going to turn it all around. You know what we do with these posts? We print them out, we put them on the wall, and we play darts with them. We're like, who's the biggest fail here at the academy? We throw darts at you guys. No, we don't do that. I wrote something about failure. I don't want to read that to you. Yeah, I think I'm going to read it to you. I think it'll make more of an impression if you actually hear it live. So let's actually go to Professor Plum's latest blog entry. A little bit of Plum, a little bit of Plum. Where is Plum? Here we go, some Plum. Actually, I need to go to page 2. Okay, so I wrote, few people ask, how do I succeed? Actually, maybe I need to put this in, this maybe all ties into what I'm actually going to talk about. So I'm going to cut and paste this because I think it's actually important enough that it actually goes with the above. So I put a little note to myself so I don't forget. Goes with the make a plan speech above. There we go. Send it to myself. If something's important, I email it to myself. I hate having, one email in my box or 2 emails in my box, and I can see my inbox in Gmail. Oh, there it goes. Arrived. I got email from Professor Plum. No way. I hate seeing that email in there that I can't address. It's just nagging me. That's what's there. That's why I email it to myself. So it's like nagging me. Do it. Write it in the book. Take care of it. Unfinished things have to be taken care of. Okay. So I say, few people ask, how do I succeed? When you think about it, what kind of questions do you ask? Most people ask, how do I avoid failure? How do I avoid failure? Okay, think about this. Consider this. Do you come up and ask, when you're learning something, like you're learning chess or you're learning a sport or you're learning how to draw or whatever? Yes, I guess there is that thought initially, that inspiring thought. How do I beat this? How do I beat this game? But once you get into something, a lot of times it ends up being just the opposite. Instead of asking, how do I succeed? You start asking, how do I avoid failure? And therein lies the problem. Their mind, I'm trying to make this, what is it? Second person, but I've written this in like third person. Your mind is poisoned with wishful thinking disease of consensus. But why did I write that? Sometimes I read stuff, I'm like, why did I write that? No, I think I remember why. The reason why you're asking how do I avoid failure is because your peers, you adopt the attitude of your peers. Your peers have the same type of attitude. If all your peers around you had the attitude of, or asked, how do I succeed? Guess what? You would start asking that question, how do I succeed? But because your peers around you are failures as well, they're also asking the question, how do I avoid failure? So you're poisoned with this disease of consensus. What everybody else is thinking, you're like, that's the place I want to be. Everybody else is thinking that. I don't want to stand out. I don't want to feel stupid. I want to go along with them. So instead of examining whether something's valid or not, you ask how many people are thinking it. So then you begin this cycle of failure. How do I avoid failure? Let me tell you a secret. There's no middle ground. Such a thought is delusional in nature. It's a fairy tale. It's a trapdoor for you potential. Fuck. I hate reading my posts and finding a grammatical error. Oh. For your potential asshole. Okay, I just corrected that. I can go back to reading it without becoming violent. It's a trapdoor for your potential. It's a very real threat to your life. I don't mean physical threat like a guy with a knife, but your overall life, your life success, your life competence. It's a threat to that life. So many people think that there is some neutral ground in the universe, some safety zone of inactivity, some universal timeout during a long game of tag. This is a foolish idea at best and a dangerous indulgence at worst. Stop sitting around thinking, I could stay here and not do anything. As long as I'm not fucking up, I'm fine. This is neutral zone right here. I'm not succeeding, sure, but I'm not failing either. I'm just on this neutral place, right? Safety zone. Bullshit. Actually, maybe I should type that. Let me add that. Let me add that little idea. I think that's important to always capture the spirit of what people are thinking. I'll just say it. I'm not exactly succeeding, but I'm also not failing either. I'm just kind of hanging out in this neutral safety zone. Period. Okay. That sentiment kind of gets the idea across. Hold on. Time out. I need to go get a glass of water. Let me pause this for a second. Okay, I'm back with my water, and I just took another swig of that wine. That terrible healing wine. It tastes like piss. It literally tastes like piss. Okay, so we're saying I'm not exactly succeeding, but I'm also not failing either. I just kind of fucking Chinese grammar. I just kind of hanging out here. I just kind of hanging out in this neutral safety zone. No, asshole, it's I'm just hanging out. I'm just kind of hanging out, bro, in this neutral safety zone. Maybe I should just leave that in there so you think it's like Chinese grammar. I just kind of hang out in this neutral zone. I know fail, but I know succeed. This is a foolish idea at best and a dangerous indulgence at worst. No one can live outside the governing forces of natural law. Principles, hint, hint. This is an inarticulate pipe dream dreamt up by the incompetent, the lazy, the careless, and the indulgent. I've got bad news for daydreamers. The only way to avoid failure is to succeed. The only way to avoid failure is to succeed. Did you hear that? The way to avoid failure is not to fuck up. I mean, the way to avoid failure is not to just avoid fucking up. It's to succeed. You can only not fail by succeeding. You understand that? That negates that whole neutral position, which means if you think you're avoiding failure because you're not failing, you're just hanging out and not screwing up, that is failure. That is failure. Just like there's that 1 degree of function and infinite degrees of dysfunction below it. To get to that 1 degree of function, you have to go forward. You have to arrive at that. You have to build that. You have to build something functional. Function doesn't happen by chance, by accident. There is an arrangement, there is a design to create function, something functional. Like a watch, you're not going to just throw metal around and it's just going to suddenly form into a watch. You have to do something actively to create gears, wires, battery, etc., watch face, and create a watch. You have to organize everything. You have to put some effort, some time, some work into it to create this watch that moves. That is success. A functioning watch is success. A functioning watch does not happen by accident. If you don't do anything, if you just have all the gears and you're like, look, I got all the gears, but I'm not fucking it up because I haven't broken any of the gears. I haven't broken the battery. I was worried about if I try to put this little gear next to this wheel here, it's so small it might break. So I don't want to fuck it up. So I'm just going to leave it on the table. Look, I haven't fucked up. I'm doing really well, right? Wrong. You failed. If the watch is not put together and it doesn't tell time, you failed. So do you see? If you try to put that little gear together with that little wheel and it breaks, yes, you failed. But guess what? If you leave that gear and that little wheel on the table and don't do anything and they don't break, you still failed. You're in the same fail department. Do you see why it's better to try to put the gear on the wheel and risk the breaking? Because at least you can go forward from that failure. You can get another wheel. You can get another little thing. But if you just never even bother to try putting them together, you guarantee failure. That is failing. So the only way to avoid failure is to succeed. The only way to avoid failure is to disassemble the watch correctly. The only way to avoid failing at social competence is to become socially competent. That's the only way to avoid failure. This post is dedicated to High School 101, whose progress, despite his Indian blood, should be an inspiration to everyone. Yeah, I read High School 101's post. This guy, you could see from this guy is the epitome of Indian sometimes. It makes you want to shoot him, but he's grown so much in his time here at the academy, and it's just touching to me. It's like, oh, look at this little guy. Oh, little guy. He's coming along. Learning the hard way. I know it well. This is High School 101, his expression blog. It has been a close companion with me on the road to social competence. But although I don't desire failure, in a sense I look forward to it. On one hand, failure is painful. It's embarrassing to admit that I'm still not good at social interaction. Yeah, it's embarrassing to a lot of people. You're all in the same boat. The difference is you're willing to admit it. You're willing to admit that you're making failures. These other guys, they're just trying to hide their failures. That's the only difference. So you're actually ahead of the curve here. It's embarrassing to admit that I'm not good at social interaction and that I still need to be enrolled at the academy. Being told that I am a failure at managing my expectations because I have no balls is a blow to my self-esteem. Yes, it is. But the fact that you're able to write this sentence in front of all these people at the academy shows that you're growing balls. See, your failure is building your balls. But after the initial pain of failure, I notice I don't feel depressed. I feel refreshed, comforted even. The pain that results from failing clears away all the bullshit and allows me to progress towards the solution. Yes, the pain that results from failing clears away all the bullshit. Yes, you need the bullshit cleared away. Before you can build a new building, you have to tear down the old foundation. You have to get rid of the bullshit. The reason why a lot of you guys have trouble creating social competence is because you have so much bullshit you haven't gotten rid of yet. You need to get rid of that bullshit. Those bullshit perspectives. Those bullshit wishful thoughts about where you want to be or where you think you're at. How competent you imagine yourself, you delusionally imagine yourself to be. And then you go out, try to talk to people, nothing happens. You're like, oh, I'm so disappointed, I'm so depressed, what happened? You were full of bullshit, that's what happens. You thought you knew what you were doing, you went out there, you fucked up, and you're like, oh, but I thought I was doing so well. No, you were delusional. Your self-esteem was based on that delusion. And then when it came crumbling down, your self-esteem went crumbling down with it. That's why you're feeling all sad and depressed. With all the delusions, denial, and justifications out of the way, moving towards the solution doesn't feel like an insurmountable task. Yes, true. It's right after a major failure that I'm the most motivated to pick up the pieces and start taking all the steps necessary to solve the problem. But why? Okay, then he quotes me, and I read this, and I was like, fuck, this was embarrassing to read. I had to rush to the ebook and fix this nonsense. So I fixed that paragraph. You won't find it if you search for it. It's still in the same place, but it's worded much better now. My knee-jerk reaction is to tell myself I'm stupid because if I had a nickel for every time I failed that social interaction, I could pay for the full course for me in a slum full of poor kids in India. But looking back at all my failures, I feel like they're actually my accomplishments because I learned much more from them than my successes. Very true. Very true. You will learn much more from your failures than you will from your successes. That's granted for anything. I noticed that the times I made the most progress were the depressing low points right after I looked myself in the mirror. Some Indian grammar going on here, and said, hey, fucktard, you aren't succeeding, you're failing. I think that failure is an integral part of the formula for success. Yes. You are failing to go through failure, and that's why you ultimately fail. He's quoting the ebook here. But in order to progress from failure, I must first acknowledge the failure and fully understand the nature of it. Learning from failure is a vital part of the progression to the solution. The times when I fail the most are when I delude myself into thinking that I'm doing well. The times when I fail the most are when I delude myself into thinking that I'm doing well, that my social interactions are just fine, and I just need to learn. My frustration with my failures comes only from a refusal to admit them. My frustration with my failures comes only from a refusal to admit them. The more I delude myself into thinking I'm succeeding, the more upset I get when I fail. Once I recognize the causes behind my failure, I'm already halfway toward the solution. Okay, so I'm not trying to turn this podcast into Snappy Slogans 101 or awesome bumper stickers to read on the back of a car. No, but I'm going to get to the point here. Hang on. Hey, bear with me. Bear with me, guys. It's coming. After more than 2 years at the academy, I realized that admitting failure and learning from it is the crux of my success here. Now I understand what the professor is talking about when he tells us to fail forward. So touching when he quotes the professor. So touching. I would rather do something and fail than not do anything and delude myself into thinking that I've succeeded. Failing in a social interaction can be mortifying. But so what? At the end of the day, when everyone's gone and I'm alone in my room, I will still feel like a fag. I am already a failure at social interaction by virtue of me being here. Yes, if you're in Manhood Academy, you're a fail. Get used to the idea. So I'm just a guy with nothing to lose and everything to gain. Yes, if you understand this, it'll be so much easier to progress forward. Great work here, High School 101. If I fail one more time, I won't lose anything except self-esteem built on false pride. Yes, a false sense of confidence. I don't give a flying fuck if I look like a fag to the outside world because I realize I already am a fag. I would much rather be an honest failure than a deluded success. Very deep, very wise words here by High School 101. Okay, so let's get to the point. If your plan is, I'm going to get better, you're not going to get better. If you can't tell me in specific detail, step by step, what you're going to do to improve, you're not going to improve, period. Meaningful training, not just training, spinning your wheels, just doing push-ups for no reason. Meaningful training that goes in a direction requires a plan that you're accountable to. Why? Without a plan, you're not accountable to any result. Without being accountable, you learn nothing about responsibility, not to mention you never improve beyond wishful thinking. This is why you guys going, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to talk to a lot of people and it's just going to work out. I'm just going to start learning stuff. It's just going to work out. You're not accountable to anything. There's nothing to go, I should have talked to this person. I should have talked to 5 people today. If you didn't talk to 5 people, you're like, look, I said I was going to talk to 5 people. That was my plan. I didn't meet the requirements of my plan. So now I have to be accountable to that plan. Do you see that? Do you understand why it's important to have a plan now? If you have nothing to be accountable to, you don't learn how to be responsible. If you don't have a fucking job where you have to show up, you're not going to learn how to be responsible in a job. If your boss says, you know what, show up whenever you want. Hey guys, we're building a company. We're building Google, but you don't even have to come to work. We're going to give you a paycheck. Just show up whenever you want. Just try to put in some work. How many of you are going to show up to work? Nobody. Because you get paid anyway. In order to get paid, you have to put in the work. That's why you get the paycheck in the first place. If you don't work, you don't get paid. So your boss holds you accountable to your job. That's why the company grows and things get done and the company's a success at the end of the day. Because the boss held you accountable. If the boss doesn't hold you accountable and fire you if you do a bad job, or dock your pay if you do a bad job, or reprimand you if you do a bad job, then guess what? His company is going to suffer. He's not going to succeed. His plan is very specific. Show up to work, he pays you, boom, the company succeeds. That's how he plans to get his company to the Fortune 500, right? He has a plan. A definite plan that he's accountable to, that he can look at and go, look, am I following this plan or not? Saying, I'm going to get better at social interaction is not a plan. Because how do I know if you're following that or not? If you're thinking about it, is that following it? How would I know? You have nothing to be accountable to. If you're not accountable to it, it's not going to work. Without a plan, you're not accountable to blah, blah. Okay, we read that. Any competent training requires a plan of action. What you are specifically going to do to change your outcome. A specific plan of action. Also known in business circles or in other circles as the action plan, right? Everybody wants to get better, but until they start realizing what it takes to get better, hoping you get better will not make you get better. Intending to get better will not make you get better. A lot of you guys think that just good intentions are going to work themselves out. Wrong. The thing insulating most people from improving is their pride. They don't want to admit their failures. Oh, sounds familiar. Sounds like High School 101's post. Yes. It all ties together now. It's all like a magical Hollywood movie that's just tying together. You're like, why did they show that bunny at the first 10 minutes of the movie? Why did it hop by the screen? Oh, they kill it at the end and then my emotions get jerked around. Oh, that's why they did it. Yes. All the metaphors, all the props, all the actors, the storyline is all tying together in this Oscar-winning moment, so pay attention. They don't want to admit they don't know what they're doing. They don't want to admit they need help. And that's why they're so good at making excuses to ensure they never improve. And then I list some, but I don't have any off the top of my head. They rationalize their failures so that they end up never having to address them or change them. Hey, I failed because of this. It was this person's fault. I was doing this. That's why I failed. If I had just done this, I wouldn't have failed, right? So if you keep making excuses for the failures, you never have to be accountable to them. You never have to address them. You never have to change them. Same with a plan. If you don't have a plan, you're never accountable to it. You don't have to change anything about what you're doing. Like if you have a plan and to talk to 5 people a day and you don't talk to those 5 people, well, guess what? You're not accountable to the plan. Did I say that right? Wait. If you have a plan to talk to 5 people, you're accountable to that plan. So you have to change something if you don't meet that plan. You have to change what you're doing to try and meet the plan that you set for yourself. But if you don't have a plan, you're just like, I hope I socialize someday. You don't have to change anything about your behavior. If you don't have to change anything, nothing is going to change. Do you understand? This is one of the most common pitfalls hindering students from improving. You have to realize you have no fucking clue what you're doing. I should put that on a t-shirt somewhere. By pretending you do, you're only shooting yourself in the foot. You need to drop the pretense of wanting to improve and actually sit down and devise a detailed, specific course of action that will get you from point A to point B. If I read it and I can't tell what you're doing at any given moment to improve, then you're not going to improve. Simple as that. So if I pick up your plan and it just says, hey bro, I'm going to bro it out. I'm just going to kick back and just do it. I'm going to talk to some peeps and that's it. Yeah, if I don't know what you're doing at 8 p.m., not going to happen. If I don't know what you're doing at 3:30, not going to happen. If I were to stop you at any point and ask what you're doing right now to improve, and your answer was, I don't know, reading, I guess, you're not going to improve. That's why disorganized people never improve. They've not arranged anything in a functional working order to get from point A to point B. They're just hoping, wishing, and intending to get there someday. Many people have a fear of failure, but what they don't realize is that they've already failed. Failure is a default setting. Yes, if you're not doing anything to improve, you're already failing. It's not something you need to choose to avoid. You start at failure. Do you guys get this? You don't choose to avoid failure. You already are a failure. You start at failure. When you start life, you start as a failure. A baby is a failure. A baby has to grow up into an adult. A baby has to learn skills to interact in society, right? If you just grow up and we just leave you as a baby and nobody takes care of you, we just feed you food and whatever, but you have no parenting, there's no mother and dad. There's no mother and dad or grammar. We teach you Chinese or Indian. No, you're just fed food just to keep you alive, but there's no mommy or daddy to teach you anything. You're guaranteed to be a failure. You will mature into nothingness. You don't need to try to avoid failure. You start at failure. You are failing. Right now, if you ask, how do I avoid failure or am I failing? If you're asking, are you failing? Yes. The answer is yes. You are failing already. You don't need to fear failure. You've already failed. Yes, you don't need to fear it. Yeah, everybody's like, I'm so scared of blowing it. I don't want to blow it. Guess what? You've already fucked up. You've already blown it. The only real difference is nobody has bothered to inform you of the fact. Nobody like me has come along and said, hey, fucko, you're already a failure. You've already blown it. You're blowing it right now. Right now as we speak, we are doing nothing. You're blowing it. This is blowing it. This is the definition of failure. You're there. You don't need to worry about fearing failure anymore. You're already there. You know, they say that gay thing. You ever heard of like movies? You fear success. This is exactly what they're talking about. This is the gay speech they're talking about. Everybody is too busy trying to make you, actually that's not what they're talking about, but I'm bending it to apply here. Everybody's too busy trying to make you feel good about yourself instead of teaching you, look, time to get off your ass. Time to stop pretending. Time to stop fooling yourself. Time to start devising a definite course of action, aka a plan to not fail, which means to succeed. Your plan has to be designed to succeed, not just avoid failure. Do you wonder why girls are attracted to guys who know what they're doing? Guys who have a direction? Because they are succeeding. That direction is the definition of success. That is attractive. When I talk to you and I know what I'm talking about, I have a definite tone. I'm speaking to you about something definitively. I'm like, you guys, do you think this is a good idea? Should I talk about this? I don't know. What's your opinion on this? Is this okay with you guys? Do you think this is okay? Is that attractive? No. That's because there's no direction to what I just said. It's all questioning. It's all wishy-washy. It's like worried. It's neurotic. It has no definite course of action. Nothing is accountable there. So there's nothing attractive about it. There's no order to it. It's all disorganized. Nothing is set in stone there. Nothing's concrete. There's no principle. Gravity is so attractive. If you learn about the intricacies of gravity, you realize how orderly it is. It's attractive. It's like when you look at something under a microscope, like you look at a leaf under a microscope. Is a leaf attractive? Yes. Is the Taj Mahal, that famous building built by that Indian guy in India somewhere? Built by the Indian guy in India? That's my best guess. That huge structure, like the pyramids, all those things. The pyramid might as well be a leaf under a microscope. It's just amazing, all the structure that is there, all the design that is there, all the arrangement that's there. From a little leaf to like a building, to like an architectural marvel, a bridge. The pyramids, the Egyptian pyramids. When you look at those things, you marvel. Why? Because stone is all over the place and it's just all jacked up and disorganized? No. Because somebody put effort into arranging them into an orderly map, an orderly fashion, an orderly thing, a plan. There's a plan. When you look at a pyramid, you see a building plan, a blueprint, something orderly. Something orderly, something of order. And thus, it's attractive. If I throw sand on the ground, there's no attraction to it. It's all disorganized. There's nothing arranged about it that's attractive. It's just there. But if I build that sand into a sandcastle, you're like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. Why? Because I've arranged everything into an orderly way. That's attractive. People are attracted to order. When you create a plan and you accomplish that plan, you succeed. That is orderly. Ultimately, success is about being orderly. Is about creating order in your life. It's not about making money. It's not about this and that. Like, if you make $1 billion, it's not success. Success is being orderly. Like, there are billionaires out there who are miserable, or there are billionaires out there who live a decadent lifestyle, who are just doing things to try to make themselves happy, but they're just not happy. Like, you could be a billionaire, you could have an inheritance, and not know how to manage your interactions, so you're a miserable, passive-aggressive guy, a resentful guy. So, just having money does not guarantee you're a success. Success is becoming orderly, knowing how to manage your expectations. knowing how to express yourself, to convey your person to another person. This is creating order. So that's the podcast for today. I had a couple other things I want to talk about, but I'll try to get to them another time, another place. I had this amazing idea for a sign-off. Just kidding. I thought it was going to be super snappy. I was just going to pause dramatically like, I'll catch you Manhood Academy students later on the flip side, Jack. It did not happen. Okay, fuck. Time out. I realized I can't end this podcast yet, even though my voice is dead. Because I told our new student, the Morellian, what the hell is that? Some manga guy. And I'm so inquisitive as to why your icon doesn't show up in the chat room. What evil trickery is this? Could some resident nerd troubleshoot or brainstorm why his icon isn't showing up in the chat room? Mr. Morellian, could you re-upload your avatar icon, whatever it is, this little Ryu guy? Looks like he's a Dragon Ball Z character. Could you re-upload it just to check and make sure that something isn't screwed up? Because for whatever reason, your icon isn't showing up on the forum. Anyway, I told you that I would try to talk about what you wrote about in your introduction section. By the way, the editor you're using is terrible. Please fix your grammar, your sentence, not your sentences, your paragraphs. There we go. Your paragraphs. It looks like your apostrophes are going the wrong way. I don't know what you edited this on, but it's pretty lousy. So try and fix that. Because you have paragraph breaks in some places, and some places your paragraphs touch, so it's kind of confusing. So fix that ASAP and get rid of that editor you're using and use something else. What did you write here? Okay, so you wrote something that I wanted to address. Approaching, meeting, and finding women to date and screw isn't a problem. Well, congratulations, you're in a position, you're ahead of 90% of the students here, maybe 95%. Approaching, meeting, and finding women to date and screw isn't a problem, maybe because you're a sexy bastard. But when it comes to longer term, it's over by 90 days, 3 months, most of the time. That's about the time they start testing me. Actually, no. You're clueless. You don't realize that it's not about testing you. Your perspective is wrong. You have no authority. They're like, I guess you could look at it as testing it. Like, if you're a kid, now if you're a parent and you have kids, they're going to push their boundaries as soon as they come out of the womb. Even when they're little babies, they're going to cry when they're not hungry just to get you to come. So immediately kids are going to be testing their boundaries until they feel a boundary because they're checking for where the boundaries are. You're supposed to be having boundaries in place already before they're born. So the same thing with girls. Before a girl comes into your life, before the little baby comes into your life, she's like, gaga, goo goo, I like you. Before she comes in, you have to have the crib ready for her, metaphorically speaking, which means you have to have boundaries set up already for her. Things she shouldn't be doing, things she should be doing, limitations, expectations, all those things should be there in place before you meet her. You obviously don't have those, so you're assuming like the testing is starting 3 months in, which obviously tells me you're unaware of what's going on during the courtship process, the dating process, whatever you want to call it, where you first meet the girl, right off the bat. So, since you're not having trouble meeting girls, attracting women, I'm going to assume you're one of these guys that can go out to a club and you're a fairly decent, maybe a good-looking guy. And so a girl is initially attracted to you, or you're a charismatic guy maybe, you tell a great story. I don't know exactly what the story is, but those are my hunches, those are my guesses, because you say you have no problems meeting them and finding them and dating them and fucking them. So I'm going to say on some level you're physically attractive and you're maybe a personable guy. So you can get a girl with some limited resources that you have, some limited, it's just like if I'm tall. If I'm a tall guy, that's an advantage. But it doesn't mean you've proven here that I'm ultimately going to be able to attract a woman. So that's why we're here to teach you what creates attraction. These things like your looks, your money, your height, etc. These are really pretenses. These are really to get your foot in the door. As you've noticed, you can get your foot in the door, but if you don't know how to keep your foot in the door, you might as well not have your foot in the door at all. So For 90 days, you have your foot in the door and you have no fucking clue what's going on because you're assuming they start testing you at 90 days. No. The minute you start meeting this girl, very first time you lay eyes on her, you start talking to her, she's going to try and suss out where the boundaries are. Where are the limitations? What do you allow and what don't you allow? Those things are going to be discovered in the very first conversation and onwards. Then you say, I either become too mean with them and end it. You become too mean with them, meaning you're just really not into the girl, so you don't care about what happens, and so you just blow up. This is a lot of this is also resentment built up because you're not handling your expectations right off the bat, right in the beginning. You're letting resentment build up from having your expectations violated. Like if somebody slaps you in the face and your expectation is, hey, don't slap me, or hey, treat me friendly, and every time I see you, I go, hey, buddy, hey, Morellian, I just slap you in the face. I slap you in the face. I slap you in the face. Maybe you're a guy who's like, man, you're a pacifist. You're anti-violence. And so you're thinking, hey, I'm not gonna punch this guy. I'm gonna show this guy I'm a peaceful guy and he's just gonna change. And I just keep slapping you in the face, keep slapping you. Well, because there's no boundary, eventually there's gonna be a resentment that builds up in you. You're like, and eventually, like you said, you're gonna explode. You're gonna be, quote, quote, too mean, right? You're gonna yell at them. You're gonna unleash on them. Everything's gonna be pent up rage. It's like a pot that's boiling. Every time they slap you in the face, they're just turning the heat higher underneath the pot that's boiling in you. And eventually, boom, just gonna explode, right? So that's what's happening here with those girls. Or if I like them, I make an even bigger mistake of being nice and appeasing them, only to suffer through a couple months of being walked on while I sit on my hands and bite my tongue, and then it ends, usually in misery. Yes, this is the typical nice guy mistake, where you're so worried about losing a girl. You love her so much. She's so beautiful. She's so hot. She's so great in bed. She's so cute. She's so charming. You're like, oh, I gotta do everything she says. Otherwise, I'll lose her. No. It's the worst thing you could do. What you obviously have no fucking clue about is that girls need you to direct their behavior. They need you to set the boundaries and the limitations for what they can do and what they can't do. You're like the dad. If you're a dad with no clue what to do, no direction, and you're coming to your kids and going, hey, what do you think is a good idea to make for dinner? Should we have chocolate cake or vegetables or turkey or what? I don't know. What should we do, guys? If you're that type of dad, you're blowing it. You're fucking up. You have no idea what you're doing. As the male in charge of a family, of a relationship, etc., it's your job to direct everybody else. You're the general. You have soldiers. You're supposed to be placing them on the map to attack for your battles, to win your war. If you don't know what you're doing, you're not qualified to be a general. You're going to get everybody killed. So you have to know how to lead your troops into battle. I hate that analogy, but the point is, you have to have direction. You have to know what your expectations are. You have to bring expectations with you into the relationship. Right when, not even before that, right when you're meeting the girl, you have to have expectations. And this is part of the ebook, which you either haven't read or don't understand yet, or aren't asking the right questions yet about the ebook. What you don't understand, you should definitely ask questions, because this stuff is covered in the ebook. So, you need to understand what are the difference between functional expectations and dysfunctional expectations, because right now you have dysfunctional expectations, which either means you have very limited low expectations, like you allowed a girl to get away with X, Y, and Z, which is obviously the case here. You allow a lot of bitch behavior to happen. You allow your expectations to be violated, all because you think that if you just play along, she's going to like you and she's going to stick with you. Well, as you found out, that's wrong. I've had few longer-term relationships with women, 3, 4, and 5 years, but for the most part, they weren't very satisfying, and 2 of those were really hard and ended badly for me. Again, same result. Either you don't care about them really, so you don't give a fuck what you do, and if you blow up, it's because you're just becoming resentful over them, continually violating your expectations month after month, year after year. Or the other case is you're just this flat-out nice guy who is trying to appease everybody, trying to be the people pleaser, thinking that if you just meet everybody's expectations and sacrifice your own, everybody's going to love you. Wrong. What you don't realize is that your expectations, when they're functional, when they create an orderly situation for the both of you in the relationship, this is attractive. That does not always mean, okay, first of all, you got to get away from this idea of nice and mean, like I'm being a mean guy or a nice guy. When you don't give a girl her way, she's going to automatically label you as a mean guy. That means nothing. When she says you're mean, you tell her that means nothing. That means zero, zilch. What matters is if you're meeting her need for order. If you're meeting her need for order and she doesn't like it, too bad. Because guess what? That's what's going to make her fall in love with you. That's why girls fall in love with me, because I meet their need for order, which means you have to be the one in charge. If she's in charge, you're not meeting her need for order. I know once you tell her, look, it's my way, she's going to go, oh, you're mean. You're telling me what to do. It's so mean. I won't like you. She's going to threaten you with not liking you. But guess what? Because these principles are principles, they govern social interaction, which means it doesn't fucking matter what comes out of her mouth, what she says. She could be the Antichrist screaming about, you're a fucking misogynistic pig. But if you're meeting her need for order, if you're in charge, she will have no choice but to fall in love with you. No choice. But again, this means you have to be meeting her needs. You can't just be in charge and say, cut off your hand. Because in that case, you have a dysfunctional expectation. She may follow it, but if she cuts off her hand, she's going to be in a more disorderly condition than when she first met you. So you are taking the relationship towards disorder, which is unattractive. Same thing if you start beating her. You can be in charge, but if you start beating her, she's not going to be happy with you because you're making her face turn to pulp. And this is, again, a disorderly condition. So you need to be able to create order in her life. And sometimes that means telling her no. Just like if you have a kid who's spoiled and they like chocolate cake, guess what? If they eat chocolate cake every day, they're going to get cavities. They're going to have health problems. They're going to be fatties. They're going to be miserable. And guess what? They're going to blame you. But guess what? They're also going to blame you if you take away their chocolate cake. They're going to say, you're so mean. You're so terrible. You're a horrible parent. I hate you. That's a lie. Their conditioning hates you, not the person underneath that who is being retrained when you enforce your expectations. So, for instance, if your fat kid comes to you and says, look, I love chocolate cake. Let's have chocolate cake for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And you go, no, fatty. Guess what? We're having vegetables. We're having a salad. We're having a sensible dinner. We're having chicken. We're having whatever you want to, chicken casserole. I don't know, whatever you want to make. That's just not straight sugar, right? It's not just something fully unhealthy. But the point is not to make the most, I'm not stressing that this is the most biologically sound meal on the earth. The point is that it's not what is represented by chocolate cake, which is just pure indulgence, pure, just something that's super bad for your health. So if you make a meal that's healthy, it'll increase your child's health. It'll improve your child's health, I should say. It'll give them the necessary fuel to operate throughout the day, and they won't have cavities, and et cetera, et cetera. So there's all these benefits to them being healthy. Now, a great meal, a healthy meal, may not taste as great as chocolate cake right on the surface, but its long-term benefits create an orderly body, an orderly existence, a happier person. So this is what it means to enforce a functional expectation, something that creates order, giving your kid a good meal. In a relationship with a girl, giving her a good meal is akin to saying, I'm in charge. You need to follow my direction. Now, of course, she's going to protest and pout because girls today are, because of feminism, they're like, hey, I'm equal. I can do what I want. I'm strong, independent. I can do what I want. Right? So you're going to have a lot of resistance in the beginning. And again, you have to read the section on emotional investment because emotional investment plays in here. People have to have incentive to follow your leadership. People have to have incentive to, like for instance, your kid, if they're used to eating chocolate cake and you just feed them vegetables, but you never tuck them in, you never tell them you love them, you never play with them, you may have an expectation that they eat healthy food, but if they don't have any incentive to follow your orders, if they don't have an incentive to follow your expectations, they're not going to do it. You have to be making them happy. So, on one hand, in a sense, you're making them unhappy by violating their expectation and giving them your expectation. For instance, they want chocolate cake and you want to give them healthy food, right? So you give them a healthy meal. That's your expectation. That's competing with their chocolate cake expectation. So on one hand, you're making them not so happy. You're making them angry. You're making them hate you, at least verbally. But because ultimately this healthy meal is creating order in their lives, it's making them happy. That's underneath the surface, okay? But also, there is your expression. When you are expressing yourself, sharing your experiences with your kid, when you're meeting their social needs, like you're playing with them, you're hanging out with them, you're playing catch with them, you're doing you're stimulating them, you're giving them pleasurable experiences. When they do their homework, you're saying good job, you're hugging them because they're your kids, you love them. So even though you're giving them a healthy meal that's not that exciting to them and they're like, oh, I hate you, I want to eat chocolate cake, you're still giving them pleasure. In other areas, you're giving them pleasure. You're meeting their need for order. So ultimately, creating functional expectations on the surface. If you're an indulgent person and you indulge yourself, like you just eat chocolate cake all day, it's going to be painful to you on the surface. But really, over the long run, it's going to be pleasurable. So you have to understand that functional expectations are not meant to be severe. They're not meant to be painful. They're not meant to cause the person distress. But if a person is used to indulging themselves and used to indulging their dysfunctional expectations, when you start introducing functional expectations in their life, you start introducing functional expectations into their life, it is going to cause them distress. It is going to be a painful experience because they're so used to indulging their bad habits, their bad expectations, their dysfunctional expectations. So yes, in that sense, it is going to be painful. But like I said, at the same time, you're nurturing them. You're meeting their need for order. You're meeting their social needs, your physical need for affection, etc. If you're doing this, you're giving them the incentive to meet those expectations that they don't want to meet. For instance, eating that meal. So there are two things. There is the incentive: eat the meal because I love you, and I'm going to take you out, and I'm going to praise you for being a good boy and listening to daddy. Right? I'm going to give you affection, attention. That's the positive side. On the negative side, if you don't obey me, you're going to get a spanking. I'm going to beat your ass. So you have two incentives to do what I say. You have a positive and a negative incentive, and that's for everything, in every case, for you, your entire life, for relationships, for everything. There's a negative incentive, like when you go to work. Why do you go to work? There's a positive incentive. What happens if you go to work? You get paid, right? Yes. What happens if you don't show up at work? Not only do you not get paid, what's the negative incentive? You get fired, right? You become homeless. You live in a box. So there's always a positive incentive and a negative incentive. So the negative incentive, over time, you'll read about this and learn more about this as you go through the program. You'll learn that women built up emotional investment when you're meeting their needs. When like when you first start dating, everything's happy, everything's super sweet, special, right? It's just like new romance. You're trying to put your best foot forward. You're trying to take them on dates. You're trying to make her feel good. You're trying to make her laugh, all that good stuff, right? So you're giving her pleasure. So through that pleasure, she's building up emotional investment. But at the same time, you have to have your boundaries, your core boundaries. You have to be respected. She has to know that you're in charge, etc. So little by little, you're going to start introducing expectations that are more difficult to meet. For instance, when you first meet a girl, you can date her a couple times and then maybe you can get a kiss. But if you try to get sex right on the first date, that's a huge expectation. So she's going to have a lot of incentive to have sex with you. She's going to have a lot of emotional investment to have sex with you. But to get a kiss doesn't require as much emotional incentive as having sex. So we can say that having sex is a greater expectation than getting a kiss. So there's less emotional investment required for a kiss than for having sex in general. Same applies with all your other expectations. The greater the expectation, the more emotional investment is required because it's like a change. It's like if, for instance, I'll give you an example from my life. If I'm in a relationship and a girl's smoking or drinking too much, I'm not worried about AA or her quitting, whatever. I've done it before, so it's not a big deal. Meaning that I've had girls that smoke in my relationships, and I tell them, look, well, I don't tell them. I know that at a certain point they're gonna have enough emotional investment where I'm gonna start requiring that expectation. At first, I'll let them know that it doesn't meet my expectations. Like I don't like smoking. But at some point, I'm going to start enforcing that expectation and saying, look, you're not allowed to smoke in my house. You're not allowed to smoke here. You're not allowed to smoke. And eventually it's going to be, you're going to quit because I'm in charge. But I realize that requires more incentive. I have to be more pleasurable than her cigarette. So I have to be meeting her need for order in order for her to give up that cigarette. So I have to be giving her a pleasurable experience. I have to be stimulating her. I have to be meeting her emotional needs. I have to be leading her. I have to be stimulating her by speaking to her. I have to be socializing with her. I have to be showing her affection. I have to be meeting, physical needs, etc. So all these things I'm doing are creating this emotional investment. So that eventually my expectation is introduced. That's a big expectation, like quitting smoking. If you've ever been addicted to smoking or something like that, it's a pretty serious thing. There has to be a pretty serious incentive. So she has to be emotionally invested in you. So you'll learn about this later. It's a little more, actually this is probably more right down your alley since you're already dating and meeting women. So you really need to learn how to manage your expectations effectively. So this is more crucial for you right now. learning about emotional investment, how that works, and learning how to enforce your expectations. So read the ebook, ask questions. I am not a mind reader. Dr. Ladice is not a mind reader. None of the instructors here are mind readers. We can only help you as much as you help yourself, meaning as much as you share your experiences. We can only comment on shared experiences. Yes, to a certain extent, we can understand like the way you phrase things and the way you speak about things, that we understand the problem just from experience. But usually, if you don't share the problem or you're not very explicit, clear about your situation, we're not going to jump the gun and mind read, because it could be any number of things. So we want to make an accurate diagnosis, so we need your input. So, for instance, right here, when you're telling me about your relationship troubles, I've seen it a billion times over, so I have enough experience to comment on that without you needing to be so explicit. But for other things to understand how you're screwing up, how you're how you're applying incentive, how you're giving this girl incentive, that needs to be understood. So that requires you to share your experiences about how you're trying to give girls incentive to talk to you, to meet with you, to want to be in a relationship with you, what you're doing to make them happy, etc. And then also, we're going to need to know how you're trying to enforce your expectations. What are you doing? What active steps are you doing when a girl violates your expectations? And then we also need to know what your expectations are for a relationship, etc. So it's a little involved, and that's why you're here. So it's the more you understand what's going on, the easier it becomes. It's very simple in concept, but in execution, in application, it's difficult. That's where the difficult part is. For instance, I can tell you very simply how to get your expectations met, but actually doing that with another live person is daunting if you've never done it before. It's intimidating. But the more you understand it, the more experiences you have with people, the more you practice getting your expectations met, practice expressing yourself and conveying your person to another person, the easier it'll become, because these concepts are very simple in nature, but again, difficult in execution. That's why you need to train. That's where the training comes in. So that's why you're here. Okay, I think hopefully I covered that. Let's see, did I cover everything here? Blah, 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 blah. Satisfying, really hard, ended badly for me. Okay, I hope I covered it. I didn't want to, I think I wanted to talk about it because I almost had this thought, like for some reason we forgot to cover it in the ebook, but I'm almost certain we covered this in the ebook. So read that. Don't be a lazy fuck. It already sounds like you're a lazy fuck. So it's to your benefit to read the material that's here. It's here for you. It's not here for me. It's here for you. We wrote this for you. I don't need this help. I already know what I'm doing here. I already know how to manage a relationship. You don't. So don't think you're just going to take the shortcut and learn how to do it overnight. It's not going to happen. If you think that's going to happen, or if that's your plan, you're going to find out the hard way. Listening to podcasts, great information, but again, not going to help you unless you put in the work. Not going to help you unless you take the time to get input from other people, meeting your fellow students here at the Academy, sharing your experiences, writing your experiences down so the instructors can comment on them. This is part of the process of learning how to socialize. When you're interacting with us, you are also expressing your expectations. We're expressing our expectations right back. So you're going to see in real life how it happens, how we manage our expectations, how I manage my expectations, and then how you manage your expectations with me. This is practice for you. Interacting with your fellow students, it's practice for you, managing your expectations. So take advantage of that. Don't be a lazy fuck, and fix this opening your matriculation entry, because it's driving me nutty. Okay, that's the end of the podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in. Catch you next time.